Welcome to the Communities of Character podcast. I'm Jennifer Hogan, a former high school principal and currently senior character coach with the Hope Institute. Today's episode is a little different, and in a lot of ways, it captures the heart of why we do this work. We recently had the opportunity to set up a live pop-up podcast studio at the Hope Institute Network Summit, which is a gathering of leaders who have been deeply engaged in building cultures of character in their schools and districts. It's a space filled with people who aren't just talking about culture, but who are actively doing the work every day in real classrooms, with real teams, and in real leadership situations. And so instead of one extended conversation, what you're going to hear today is a collection of voices, short, meaningful reflections from leaders who each bring a different perspective, but who are all connected by a shared commitment to character-centered leadership. You'll hear from Dr. Tom Lickona, whose work has helped shape the field of character education for decades, from Drayton Nabers, whose leadership continues to influence communities across our state, and from Dr. Mackey, the Alabama State Superintendent of Education, who brings a statewide lens to what it looks like to lead with character at scale. What stands out in each of these conversations isn't just what they say, but what connects them. There's a consistent thread running through all of it, a reminder that character isn't something we add on when we have time, and it isn't something that lives in a program or a set of posters. It's foundational. It shows up in how we lead, in how we make decisions, how we interact with people, and how we build culture over time. So as you listen, I want to invite you to reflect on your own leadership, on what you're modeling, what you're reinforcing, and what people around you are experiencing on a daily basis. Because at the end of the day, the work of character is not something that happens all at once. It's built in the consistent, often unseen moments that shape a culture over time. Let's jump into these conversations from the Network Summit. When you look at schools today, what do you think most schools misunderstand about character ed?
They might think in the beginning that it's mostly a matter of posters on the wall and announcements over the PA, and what you can say is basically window dressing rather than culture shaping. Culture requires a whole set of strategies that, in particular, developing quality relationships, and that takes time, that takes love, it takes investment of energy. And so that's the first mind shift that schools need to do, thinking this is not about something on the wall, it's something in the heart. It's about relationships. And that's going to be a journey. And then so many other things can build on that. What happens in classroom. So I would say that's one thing. Also, they may underestimate that it does require really not money, because it doesn't cost anything to be caring, but it does require effort, patience, perseverance, and the time to talk, the time to reflect. Those are things that a character education initiative that's going to make a difference demand. So that's something that is an understanding that has to develop as well.
That's so good. Thank you for sharing that. For schools that want this work to last, what are those non-negotiables that they must get right?
Well, I would say be sure you've got the three crucial stakeholders, ideally four if you bring in the wider community, but at least staff, students, and parents, and have them all marching forward together in concert. You don't want the adults to be way out in front of the kids, or the kids will feel this is something being done to them. You don't want parents out in the cold, or they might make the mistake of thinking the school's going to take over the job of teaching my kid values or character, and that's not the case. We want the parents to be deeply involved. Well, those three stakeholder groups have to be involved in active ways and meaningful ways, in ways that give them all voice, they give them a responsibility, so they feel that they really do have a role to play, they are needed, they're full partners. And there are lots and lots of strategies that schools have used to send that message and to make sure that all three stakeholder groups are involved. And the wider community will become even perhaps more challenging in some cases. The wider community might be harder to change initially, although many communities have had success. You can start with the mayor's council, you can start with a community organization, but ideally we want the community to be sending similar messages so the kids don't think school is make-believe. It's not the real world. I remember talking to a middle school principal, said, this is a very competitive community. There's just a very nasty political race. said, our kids leave the school and they hear a lot of stuff that's the opposite of what we're trying to teach them in character. And so he said, it's a complex task. So the wider community has to be aware that if kids don't hear in the real world that there are people who try to live out these same character qualities in their lives, in their businesses, in their workplaces, then kids will get the idea that, hey, this is just something you have to do when you're in school. But, once you're out of school, it's every person for himself, dog eats dog.
Such good advice. And you have worked with so many schools and done research for so long in this area and are just such a character expert that we are so lucky to hear from today. But I wanted to ask you, after decades of work in this area, what gives you the most hope for the future of character education?
So I take hope and heart from pockets of progress, pockets of excellence. You can find whole states like Alabama now that has launched a movement that's growing and growing with the Hope Network. You can find so many people giving heart and soul to that effort, and that's inspiring. And there are other states across the country doing similar kinds of work in character education. So the character education movement for me is hope on the horizon. It keeps me from getting down and discouraged. It keeps me getting out of bed in the morning and joining people like yourself and your colleagues who are fighting the good fight. Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I know your time's limited. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So you're one of the co-founders of Hope Institute.
Yes.
Share with us, what are you most proud of in being the founder of Hope Institute?
I'm most proud of Liz Huntley and the work that she has done. We started out as partners. Of course, neither one of us had been in the classroom, but Liz has taken to this and she does a fabulous job.
That's awesome. She really does do a fabulous job. And the Hope Institute is just a life-changing organization for many schools and many educators.
Yeah, I mean, we started with a little pilot project, I think of 6 or 8 individuals, and now it's grown to more than 200 schools.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It really is incredible. And it grew out of your passion and your research and your learning about hope, about character education. Talk to our listeners about that. Like, where did that come from? And talk to us about that passion that you have for it.
Well, there were 2 things. One, I was in the senior management of Protective Life Corporation for 20 years. And it became apparent to me that the really valuable people at that company, and I'm talking about all those, from those that clean the floors to those that design the policies, the most important were those with the strongest character. I had a boss, his name was Billy Rushton, and when we would hire people and we would go through resumes, if somebody had an Eagle Scout in the resume, he would always hire that person. Nobody else had a chance. But what he was looking for was character. And I used to give a talk to the senior management once a month at Protective. What I did is talk about our core values every single time. And always they would come up and say, we just need to hear that more, because people want to work for something more than money. They want their work to contribute to something in a human being more than just making the human being a little wealthier.
Yeah, that's incredible. And when I was the principal at Hoover High School, we had our hiring committee. I would always say before every interview, we hire for character. We hire for character, because we were looking for those people too, just like what you described.
There's no way to develop a great institution without hiring for character.
And that's what we're doing here at Hope Institute, hiring for character. We have some great character coaches who do their work across the state.
We really do have great character coaches.
We really do.
Again, that's attributable to Liz and the leadership she's provided. And I really think it's attributable to the heart of what is at the Hope Institute, and that is teaching educators how important character is and how important their job is in developing the character of youngsters. The reason we went to schools, I mean, it was when Liz and I got together to do something about character. The family is very important, as we learned. Tom Lickona taught that this morning. The family is very important. But the family is not what it once was. When I grew up, and I think this was fairly common, I grew up in a middle-class family, we had dinner together, the family, the five of us, every single night.
Mm-hmm.
We went out on Sunday nights at the Electric Maid in 5 Points. But that's just the way the families were. So we got to see our parents, we got to see each other, and culture develops in those dinner conversations, if you will. That doesn't happen anymore. I mean, I'm a grandparent now, but our grandchildren, they've got to do this, they've got to do that, being home for dinner, and they got McDonald's. I mean, they can get dinner in 5 minutes. So the dinner conversation, the dinner meeting is just gone, and families cannot do for their children what they once did. And then churches, we love the church, and we love the role of the church in character development. But churches are not thriving as they did, say, back in the 40s and the 50s. The court of last resort is the schools. The schools have these children and students 6 to 8 hours a day, and that's where character can be instilled in the youngsters, and that's the reason we focused on schools at the Hope Institute.
And what I love about Hope Institute is that we're not a prescribed program. We come alongside and partner with schools as they create these programs for their schools. Today, we're at the network, and you see a room full of people who have completed the 3-year cohort with Hope Institute. So it's got to be exciting for you to see that room full of educators and professionals who are living this work daily.
Yeah, when we started this, we did not know what our success might be. We certainly did not anticipate the sort of success that we've had. And that is attributable, of course, to the principals and to the leaders of these schools, but to our character coaches who are fabulous, and to Liz and the work that she puts in. But we started with a little pilot group. Ruth Ash, who was formerly the chair of the Department of Education at Sanford, agreed to give us a little pilot group, I think of 6 or 8 schools. And I didn't know what was going to come from that pilot group, but Ruth came to me after 6 or 7 sessions, and she says, I think this will work. And that's how we got started. We started with 6 or 8 schools. And the truth of the matter, as chairman, I left about 3 or 4 years ago. Rod Burton, who is a fabulous chairman, has taken over. And the sort of growth that we have seen has happened since I left. So Liz has learned one lesson, and that is get rid of neighbors, and I can make things work.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I have one last question for you. You have researched Hope. You have stood for character. You've lived it. You were that as a professional. You have founded Hope Institute. What gives you hope about the future when it comes to character education?
That is a really good question. There is a statement that is attributable to Dr. Martin Luther King, and it is this, and that is the arc of history is long, but it bends toward justice. I think that things get better, though sometimes they don't get better in a day and they don't get better in a week. It may get worse in a day and worse in a week, even worse in a year. But things get better, and that gives us hope. That gives us hope. Now, the first part of hope, or put it this, in living into a better future, is denying yourself. Delayed gratification is what psychologists call it. If we can just get in students' head the importance of putting off what might be pleasurable today, and we can name all the things that lead students astray, put them off, and doing well on that test tomorrow, we get them on the right track. We get them on the hope track. And without hope, good character will not develop. There's a book by Shane Lopez on character. I can't give you the title of it right now, but Making Hope Happen, I think is the name of it. And he says hope is oxygen. And hope is oxygen to the human being. And way back yonder, an Italian poet says that the gates of hell have over them this inscription, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Without hope, we're hopeless. And if we're hopeless, we give up. And we cannot contribute positively to our own lives or to the lives of others.
Dr. Mackey. I know your time is limited. We are so glad to have you with us. And thank you so much for speaking at the Hope Institute Network today. That was just amazing. I just wanted to ask you a few questions. As you think about schools across our state, where they are right now, where do you see the role of character and culture fitting in that bigger picture of student success?
So there's only so far we can go if we just focus on teaching the standards, testing, traditional academic improvement, which we're big on. I want to do that. We want to help our teachers become better teachers so that we can lift all of our students up. But there's a limit. Like there's a ceiling on how much you can do unless you invest in children and helping them to become their best self. And that's what Hope Institute's about. It's about helping children build that kind of character, that kind of resilience, and hope. It is an internal hope for the future. You know, one of the things that research tells us is that like a child who sees themselves in the future, they have hope for the future, is much more likely to be successful in school and beyond school than a child who doesn't see that hope for the future. So this is it's important work, and I certainly value all the people who are doing it.
Absolutely. Well, you sound like what Marvin Berkowitz shared with us yesterday at one of our sessions, and he talked about Clifton Talbert, who says, don't teach to the student where they are now, but where their possibilities lie. And I just thought that was very powerful. Got one more question for you. If you could leave every educator in this room with just one reminder about leadership and character, what would you want to carry with them?
So demonstrate that leadership and that character. I think that's the main thing, that we have all these children, 720-something thousand children that come into our schools every day. And we tell them all the right things, but we have to demonstrate that character. So I think it is really important that we as adults, how we treat children, how we treat one another, they are always watching us.
They are.
So it's not just teaching it, but it's demonstrating it. And you know, I see that all the time in our schools, but I think we all have to constantly be cognizant of that we're always being watched by some young person, and we want to demonstrate what it truly means to love others, to care for others, to think of others before ourselves, and all those great character traits.
Thank you for being a part of this conversation today. And remember, you can carry on this conversation on Instagram. Just give us a follow. We're at coc.podcast. And as you go back into your schools and communities, just remember, culture is built on one interaction, one relationship, and one decision at a time. We'll see you next time on Communities of Character.